What's going on, guys? Steve Lorenz with Bryce, aka Blake Marich, in the house. Bring another episode of the Michigan Insider a little bit earlier this week. I'll be out for the weekend, so we want to make sure we got another episode in before another decent official visit weekend. Nothing like Victor's weekend, but still the guys who are going to be on campus, I think, pretty significant targets. So want to make sure we got something up there, and to also recap the guys who did visit this last weekend. As maybe you don't follow, if you don't follow it that closely, Michigan has backlogged their big official visit weekend to the final weekend, which is the weekend of June 19th. It's their Victor's weekend. There's about 15, 20 kids, I think, who are going to be on campus officially, including most of the commitments. Kind of a similar strategy to what Harbaugh used to do too. You want to get all the commits and your big top targets, as many of them as you can, get them up for the big weekend. So obviously we'll have a bunch of coverage on that as it gets closer and everything. But yeah, so get right to it. Michigan hosted three guys last weekend, right? Start off with probably the biggest, I think probably the most important guy of the three, just because the board has shrunk a little bit on the interior defensive line. South Carolina 4-star Seth Tillman. Michigan has been in this one for a while. I think you and I both posted. I posted during, I think, the visit, and then you had a couple things right after the visit. Sounds like Michigan did what they needed to do here. There were rumors that Georgia, and this is another thing, with Michigan backlogging and the schools that are backlogging, the schools that hold those earlier official visits, they're really, if they think they can get a guy, they're really going to try to press to get a verbal before they make those last official visits, right? We've seen a couple schools have a few good weekends here early because they really put the full court press on some guys to make some commitments. Don't doubt that Georgia tried doing that with Seth Tillman. Makes sense. He's a great player, but he did get out of that visit, made it to Michigan, and it really sounds like Michigan did a really good job here.
Yeah. No, Michigan's been recruiting him for quite some time now. Larry Black has done a really good job, the defensive tackles coach, connecting with him. And that's a coach that had a relationship with him dating back to when he was at Vanderbilt. South Carolina is a spot that they actually recruited quite a bit. Vanderbilt down there, just SEC territory in general. But this is going to be one where I think Michigan is just going to have to chip away. This was also a visit that came about not last second, but he had scheduled for quite some time. But there was mixed intel if he was visiting this weekend or not. So when I got the actual full confirmation, it's crazy to say. The kid confirms, and then you hear he's maybe not coming. Then you have to double confirm he's coming. Well, he actually did come, and he came with his mom, came with his aunt. And everyone looks into, but how about such and such parent or family member this, and coaching or mentor this, why didn't they come? At the end of the day, they're going to bring the right people. And I don't look too much into it because as much as I've heard about him and his circle, those are two very important figures and people that he looks, to for their opinions. And so from everything I've gathered is they had a really good time. They really enjoyed it. And shocker, but Michigan actually really impressed them with the academic portion and what Michigan can offer on and off the field there. So I think Michigan right now still trails Georgia. I feel fairly confident with that. But I will say they made up a lot of ground in this recruitment. This is a kid that really likes the coaching staff. He really likes the culture. He likes the development of what Michigan has done over the years with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and so on and so forth at his position. So I just think the biggest thing with him is getting that comfortability and making him feel like he's at home away from home when it comes to it. Because you look at some of his other top, suitors. You got South Carolina, who's right in his home state. You got Georgia. So you're really essentially battling the SEC for Seth. I mean, essentially that. I think Clemson's also in the mix there. I know he's got a top 5, but overall, it's Michigan against the SEC for this one. I just feel like really good job. I hate to sound cliche because every visit's really good. You never hear a visit that goes bad, but this is one where I think it's substantial because one, he made the trip because there was talk that he might not even come up to Michigan because he had such a good time at Georgia. So that's a positive. But two, what they showed him and how he would fit and how he can move it up and down the line, I think really intrigued him as well. And the next step is maybe trying to get him back on another trip. I don't know if they're going to have enough time, if that's possible. I've heard different reports on when he may commit, but if they could maybe get him up for a game day visit, I think that would speak volumes because he's been up now twice to Michigan. So, we've always talked about you get those outer region guys up a couple times. That speaks volumes on their own dime. This one was it was official visit, so it was paid for. But again, if he makes a third trip, okay, I think now we're really cooking. But this definitely made a big move for Michigan in the right direction, but was it enough? I guess time will tell. So, yeah.
Yeah, we don't know yet. Visits Clemson next weekend. Clemson, not as chopped liver as like some people make that. I feel like a lot of people are like, why would a kid commit to Clemson now? Like they've had a couple bad seasons there. I don't think, I think Clemson is still a school to always keep an eye on the recruiting trail. So that'll be interesting. Other thing for Michigan's favor here, I would think there's nobody else. I was just checking just to double check. They're out for Marcus Fakato. They're out for Braden Parks. A couple other guys a little lower ranked, I believe, have committed elsewhere. You check their offer sheet. Tillman's like the only interior guy right now that they're like recruiting that has a scholarship offer that hasn't committed, either it hasn't eliminated Michigan or hasn't committed somewhere else. So they can tell him like, you're the guy, right?
I will say, sorry to interrupt you,
Nope,
that I just got a text, and I'll write something on our board, but there is a defensive lineman, more interior, that's committed to a SEC school right now that might take official this weekend in Michigan.
All right, there you go.
So we will see if that happens. He's committed, like I said, to SEC school. He has an offer from Michigan. It's being recruited by Larry Black. And we will see if it actually does. Yeah, so that's a little teaser is what they say.
Good teaser there.
But yes, so.
But either way, though, there's not many.
Not a massive board, right?
Right, the board is very compact right now. So
it's not like the linebacker board. This is a very more condensed, yeah.
Yep. So yeah, Tillman, bona fide 4-star player. Michigan basically, NIL is king nowadays. I think what you got to hope is, you talk about the academics and stuff. You hope that if the NIL stuff, if the offers are similar, can something like that academic factor actually end up making a difference, right? I think that's where, it's like the idea is like every kid is just chasing the bag now. And of course the money's going to matter. And there are some schools that I think are offering certain prospects way more than other schools are, but those other factors still matter when the money is similar, right? That's where those other factors before NIL was a thing, what are the things that matter when you're trying to land a kid, culture and academics and alt campus and all that kind of stuff. That stuff can matter when the offers are similar. So yeah, obviously Michigan made a point to pound the academics part of everything, and it sounds like they did a really good job. So yeah, we'll see there. Yeah, it's Michigan. He visited South Carolina like over a month ago. He took one on May 1st. Would not want to be South Carolina in that situation. I mean, that's a long time ago already. That's like an eternity in recruiting time for an official visit on May 1st. So yeah, we'll have to see where that one goes, but feels like it's Michigan or Georgia right now. Like I said, though, you always got to kind of keep an eye on Clemson because they're right in his backyard. And Clemson has produced defensive linemen over the years. I mean, they've produced plenty of them. So, I'm sure they'll have a good pitch ready for him. So, like I said, we'll see there. Moving on to the other major visitor of the weekend. Again, Michigan is recruiting. They've got commitments up front on the offensive line. They only have a few maybe a handful of uncommitted guys, if that. But one of them, and a guy who Michigan's been after basically since Jim Harding got to town, is 3-star. Is he a 3-star on both?
I think he's a 4-star.
Is he a? Oh, no way. Is Oceanside? He's a San Diego kid. Yep. Lincoln Mungau. Right.
For that is right.
Is Lincoln Mungau? Right. Yep. So Michigan hosted him for an official visit this weekend. Much like Tillman, there's really only 3 schools here at this point, right? It's Michigan, it's Utah, and it's Washington.
Mm-hmm.
He visits Michigan. He's already visited Utah, and he will visit Washington in a couple of weeks. But those look like I think those are the only 3 schools he's still really considering at this point. And again, sounds like Michigan did a really good job here. And again, they've made him he's been a tip-top guy. Looks like, I think he could kind of be the center in this class. If Michigan's looking to take a guy who could project to center eventually, I think he's that guy. But yeah, give us the scoop on Lincoln Mungau.
Yeah, so this is a guy that Michigan has been recruiting since actually Grant Newsome. And actually this recruitment was actually started by another former Michigan offensive lineman, Eric. What's his last name? Why am I drawing a blank now? What is his last name? Magnuson. And
Eric Magnuson, yeah.
And so he actually trains Lincoln in California.
Okay. Cool.
So that's how that connection got about. He kind of got in touch with Grant Newsome. And so he was like, hey, I got a kid that I think is actually going to be a pretty good prospect down the road. And they went on to offer him. He was obviously very honored. And so he's taken just a fond liking to Michigan in general. But when the new staff came into town to Michigan, he already had a relationship with those guys, especially Jim Harding, the offensive line coach now, who had been recruiting him at Utah. So, he's already familiar with the coaching staff. He'd been to campus a few times. So this is not like this was his first trip to Michigan. And everything that I heard about this trip and everything I gathered is they knocked it out the park. Like they did a really good job with showing him how he would fit in the plan of how they want to use him in the offense. Obviously more interior, but a guy that obviously could slide around. The development, kind of what they've done with some of the gains in terms of the strength and conditioning program. And just overall, he's been a guy that's been very vocal to me and just in general about having more of a Polynesian presence in Ann Arbor. And so, he spent a lot of time with Malachi Lee, who's on campus, who's from Hawaii. And he spent a lot of other times with coaches like Louis Powell, Jim Harding, but just the coaching staff in general, and really vibed with them and felt at home. And I think the biggest thing with this recruitment is I get the vibe that he obviously really likes Michigan. He likes the track record. He likes development. And that's almost kind of been like from what I've heard, a barometer in terms of, when he went to Utah, he was like, okay, how does their offensive line coach now stack up to Jim Harding, right? Because Jim Harding just put 2 guys in the first round of the NFL draft. And same thing with Washington. And I'll be 100% honest, I'm not sure who their offensive line coach is, but there's not as many as that have a pedigree as Jim Harding. So every school is kind of chasing and kind of selling that hope and that vision of like, okay, you could be our first round draft pick if you were to come here. And Jim Harding could say, well, just turn on the tape from this past NFL draft. Like I can do it. I have proof. The proof is in the pudding with me and what I bring to the table. So I think there's a little of that. In terms of Utah and Washington, I heard they might be making a stronger push, and you can say what you want to, quotations of what that entails in terms of push. But Michigan is definitely very much in the mix. I personally, it's not showing on there right now, but I have put in a crystal ball prediction for Michigan to land Lincoln. And I think at the end of the day, as much as there's other factors maybe involved in this recruitment, he likes what Michigan offers on and off the field. I think that was another selling point for him on this trip was the academic portion of like what Michigan has to offer once your football career is over, right? Because this is a 40-year decision. As much as everyone looks at the short term of NIL and what it can, provide for them and their family and their friends, Michigan's degree still speaks volumes and still gets you in many places that other degrees cannot. And even the resources and connections, the alumni base, like I think all that opened up and really kind of was, mind blowing to him and his family. So as of right now, Michigan has the lead. That is, I feel very confident to say, but this isn't over. There's still a lot of moving parts that could, take place and change things because as we all know, the NIL culture and just how things are and, different guys taking different spots, whatnot, things can change. But as of now, Michigan looks to be the leader in this race. And I'd say it's kind of Utah, Washington kind of initially I thought it was more Michigan, Utah. Now I think Washington is a little more in the mix than I originally thought, but I think this is still a very much a Michigan, Utah race with, Utah selling, hey, you can be the hometown kid, stay on this side of the country. His player host at Utah was a guy that Michigan recruited, and Kevin Obot from Idaho. So,
big timer,
right? And they're saying, hey, we can land big timers too, and we can produce top guys still, even without Jim Harding here. But we'll see what comes about. I just think right now he would be a nice piece to this offensive line class, which has Jakari Lipsey, who's one of my favorite prospects in the class overall. I think he, if I might be mistaken, he might be the top ranked recruit or commit in Michigan's class. A guy that he could be a guard, but he could be a tackle. Luis Esposito has been killing it on the camp circuit recently, and he's bulked up, and I think he'll have a huge senior year. And I just overall the whole offensive line class I think is very solid from top to bottom. And Sidney Rouleau, he measured in at 6'6", 273 pounds, and he has transformed his body as a guy that was close to 300 pounds at one time and now is slimmed down and basically put on mostly muscle. And he came in Michigan, and he was very much a recruiter on this trip. He said he spent a lot of time with Lincoln. He was with him all weekend long. So he was in his ear helping the Wolverines kind of hopefully seal the deal. And like I said, we'll see what comes about. But yeah, this would be a guy that I think they would love to land overall.
Yeah, so it feels like they're shooting for a 5-man class here, right? So you already got 3 in the boat. Mungau still out there.
Yep.
They'll host Ty Kennedy this weekend. They had Nico Campos on a couple weekends ago. He's from England, actually, an England kid, which is pretty cool. So they definitely want another tackle. We'll touch on Kennedy in a little bit here, but yeah, with Mungau still on the board, yeah, it looks like they're shooting for a 5-man class. So also feels like a kid that if Jim Harding was at Utah, this kid might already be committed to Utah right now, right? I mean, feel like that's a big factor in Michigan's favor is Jim Harding here. So, yep, 3-team race. Like I said, Washington in a couple weeks. So we'll see where things are coming out of that visit and go from there. But I agree with Bryce. I think Michigan probably out in front here, but this one's not really might not be close to over. I could see some late twists and turns.
Yeah.
in this one, possibly, depending on how some certain things go. So, yep. So moving on. So they did not host Christian Hanshaw last weekend. He's on the list. They did not host him. So we're moving on to next weekend, I
Mhm.
believe. And one of the biggest, if not the biggest, remaining name on Michigan's recruiting board is North Carolina top 100. I can't remember if he's a 5-star or not. Yep. Oh, geez. Yeah, he is. 11th overall. No, I didn't realize. He must have bumped up because that's, yeah. So number 3 corner in the country, number 11 overall, Joshua Dobson. Michigan battling a handful of schools here. I think the
Mhm.
biggest thing, you could write 500 words about it if you want to. I'm not going to. I think the only thing that mattered was that he left Texas A&M uncommitted last weekend. I mean, I think there was an expectation that A&M actually might lead. And again, A&M is wielding their NIL power so far this cycle, right? So the fact that he got in and out of that visit without committing, to me, says that Michigan is serious, from an NIL standpoint here, and that the interest is very mutual. And Michigan's already done really, really well at defensive back, right? But as we've said, I think corner specifically is probably the biggest single need this
Mhm.
cycle. If you add Dobson to Darius Johnson and uh,
Tavares, Harrington, and
Harrington and Blake
Blake
Jenkins, yeah,
Jenkins and
how would I
Charles
forget?
Jr.
Yep.
That's a great, yeah.
Then you're talking about one of their better cornerback hauls in recent memory. So, Bryce, what do you got on Josh Dobson here?
Yeah, I hate to keep it short and sweet, but I think that was Michigan's goal was hopefully he doesn't commit to Texas A&M coming out this weekend. And that was a trip where I think I don't want to say Michigan was nervous about, but hopeful that, they're obviously going to do really good with the visit because every visit is good, but not to the point where he's going to commit and shut down his recruitment. That wasn't the case, right? He still has been in communication with Michigan. He's still looking forward to his trip. Jannar Guilford, the corners coach, has done a really nice job. He's been out to North Carolina to see him at his school during the spring evaluation period. And I think when he came up here initially in the spring to Ann Arbor for the very first time, his expectations were like, okay, it's a big time school. I'm curious what's going to really look like now with Kyle Whittingham on staff and his new staff in place there. And I don't want to say it was a courtesy visit because of how much Guilford had been putting, the amount of time and resources in that recruitment. But I don't know how serious he was taking the visit, right? And not to say like he's not considering Michigan, because obviously you're not going to take a visit without considering him. But I think there's others maybe higher up on the board or in his mind for, his services. And he came away really like loving that trip from top to bottom. Everyone in his circle that came up on that trip too were thoroughly impressed. They loved Michigan's again, the academics portions from top to bottom. And I think not only that, but you see the facilities and you're like, wow, like the weight room, the stadium, everything about it wowed him. And even the campus life, right? Like you get that real college town vibe when you come up to Michigan and you really drive around and you see everything. So Michigan right now, I think, is battling there. And I would say Michigan is the dark horse in this race. I wouldn't say they're obviously the favorite. I would still say Texas A&M right now looks to be the team to beat. But if you had put a gun to my head and say, all right, who is maybe the school that can maybe flip the script? That would be Michigan. Michigan has done a really good job of gaining momentum in this recruitment over the last few months. They've made a really strong connection with not only him, but his family. And I think a big thing for him and that they've shown is opportunity. Because as you said, Steve, they're losing corners. Like they're going to be losing corners after this year, and they're going to need guys to step up. And Joshua Dobson is a plug and play player. He's got the height, he's got the length, he's got the athleticism. I joked, I'm not saying it's the same player, but when you watch his film, he gives me very much Jabril Peppers vibes in terms of he's just better than everyone, right? And some guys got it, some guys don't. but we always talk about the Jimmy and Joes. This is one where it's like, okay, if you got Joshua Dobson on your team, you're just better. Like, it's simply as that. You're right. You could put him in various spots, but you put him on a corner, he's gonna shut down half the field because he's that good. So I'm a huge fan of him. I know other schools have been battling there as well. It's not just Texas A&M, it's Auburn, it's South Carolina. Some other big time schools are in the mix, but Michigan has quietly done a really good job and then look to be right now is that real dark horse to maybe make some real noise and ultimately land him. But I will say, the last thing on his recruitment too, this is one where NIL will not be a problem. Michigan will not be afraid to pony up for Joshua Dobson. Like, if Michigan loses this recruitment, it's not going to be because they weren't in the ballpark for NIL for him. Like, this is one of those where I always say a few recruitments every cycle. That's one reason Michigan's not going to lose a recruitment because NIL. And this is one of those cases where that's not going to be a factor in this race at all. So we'll see. But again, very positive sign that he will be coming up this upcoming weekend.
I kind of think after this weekend, I kind of think we're going to start to hear a little bit about Michigan maybe leading this one.
It's possible, yeah.
Sorry,
very possible.
Boop alert.
Boop
She's
alert.
trying hard. She's trying hard right now, but that's my bold prediction going into this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to hear Michigan as maybe the leader in this one. Like I said, getting out of that A&M visit was huge. Yeah. I have to believe that they pushed, much like Georgia did with Seth Tillman. So, and like you said, the two biggest factors in Michigan's favor: competitive NIL and depth chart.
Mm-hmm.
Where they have an opportunity, like they legitimately have an opportunity to offer immediate playing time. You're talking Jair Hill will be gone next year, Zeke Berry, Smith Snowden. And behind those guys, there's some talent, but a lot of it's unproven, right? And that's, when Zach and I recorded in the team pods, like a lot of it's like, yeah, Shamari Earls has all kinds of talent. JoJo Edmond, I think, still has a lot of talent. We don't really ever hear about him, but, there's opportunity for, and it's what we talked about last week with Jenkins and Johnson too. It's like these guys have a chance they'll have a chance to stake their claim to see the field.
Right.
And I think Dobson is more college ready than both of those guys. No disrespect to those guys, but Dobson's just a different level of player, which is why you've seen Michigan make a big move here. So yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Auburn and South Carolina, probably more on the periphery. This one does feel like it's Michigan or Texas A&M as things stand right now. I mean, maybe Auburn a little bit still in there, but I'd think if I had to guess today, I think it'll be one of those two schools. I think Michigan's got a chance here. I don't think it's a coincidence that they kind of have come into this. They were in it. So I reported in January that Michigan was going to make a run at some big names at corner because it's a huge need. And I actually mentioned Dobson and Gabe Osborne Jr., who Michigan also made a run at. Might not be done making a run at. We'll see there, right? I mean, he committed Osborne Jr., 5-star, committed to Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma put the press on, like we've said, early with the first official, because Ohio State was really involved in that one too. But with Dobson, yeah, we talked about him back in January. They went and saw him a couple times. Seemed like things were a little bit quiet after that. Like we didn't really see much of him, or hear much about it. And then Michigan pops back up, and I think that's because the pitch started to maybe resonate a little bit more, right? And so then this weekend's their big chance to make that run. I don't see another official scheduled for him. Oh no, South Carolina's after. Sorry, I thought he already saw South Carolina. But either way, this might be the biggest name left on Michigan's board, right? 11th overall in the composite. There's Dakota Garant is probably the other guy that
I'd say it's probably 1A, 1B with those two.
Yep. So I'd argue, all things equal, I think Dobson is more. I think they need corners really, really badly. Michigan will not be losing any of their receivers from this season going into next year, provided the portal doesn't strike. But either way, I think Dobson's the most important player left in this class right now, just because you really need to solidify that cornerback spot. A couple other guys out there actually. DJ Mitchell's visiting this weekend too, committed to Miami, Ohio. He's more of a nickel. All right, she's gone. Sorry about that, dude. She's trying so hard this week. My bad, guys. But anyway, DJ Mitchell committed to Miami. He looks like more of a nickel type prospect for them, much like Montana Torbert, who will be on campus for Victor's weekend, who was committed to Indiana. I think Dobson's your top actual outside cornerback type guy. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I have a hunch that Michigan is going to make a big move this weekend and maybe take the lead in that recruitment. So
is Boop okay?
Dude, she just won't stop. I can't close the door because she'll scratch the carpet up. That's the only. Otherwise, I'd shut the door. But so my apologies to anybody who gets bent out of shape about a cat for 5 seconds. But anyway. No. So Dobson out of the way. That's like I said. That's the biggest visitor Michigan's probably hosted so far in an official visit, in my opinion.
Yes.
One of the other players we already mentioned DJ. We did mention DJ Mitchell, which is worth mentioning. At that nickel spot. The other one is, again, I think he might be he's a 3-star on both, is offensive tackle Ty Kennedy he's out of Arizona. Michigan's actually recruited Arizona kind of hard, which you would expect, under a Utah-laden staff. But Ty Kennedy's one. Everything I've heard is that Washington is in a really good spot in that recruitment. He's the son of, is it Cortez Kennedy? Isn't that Cortez Kennedy's kid? I think he was a NFL All-Pro.
Lincoln Kennedy is his father. Lincoln.
Damn it, I got the wrong Kennedy.
But his brother, I don't know if you remember him, was Zach Banner, who was getting recruited by Michigan.
Jeez, Eric Magnuson, Zach Banner, Josh Garnett. Is Josh Garnett involved in some capacity, dude? I remember those were some of the first recruits I ever covered. I can't remember if it was Banner or Garnett that lied to all the Michigan commitments and told them that he was committing to Michigan and then committed to, I think it was Garnett because he committed to Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that brings back a lot of memories. But either way, Ty Kennedy, another tackle, like we mentioned before. It looks like Michigan is set on taking another tackle in the 2027 class. We'll have to see what happens there. Like I said, everything I've heard is that Washington probably leads in that one. Honestly, to be fair, probably a guy we haven't talked enough about necessarily, just knowing that Michigan wants to take another tackle. They've got, like we said, 3 in the boat. They look good with Mungau in the middle. And then, Kennedy, Campus. Not sure if they're really going after most of the other targets have.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the different type of tackles they're now recruiting? It seems like it's very much not more like a build-up type of tackle, if that makes sense, right? Like you look at Kennedy, he's 6'6", 275, right? So that's a guy that you're going to obviously have to put on weight. Let's be honest, there's not many Malachi Lees walking around, but it seems like their type, or at least Harding's type thus far, recruiting-wise, has been more of the slimmer, mobile guys that you can kind of pack on the good weight, kind of mold to what you want, and then go from there. Because if you look at Campus, we mentioned the international guy, 6'7". Sidney Rouleau, who's already committed, is more 6'6", 273.
Yeah, he's got a ways to go.
They're all in the same mold. So
I think that's, guys like Malachi Lee don't grow on trees, right?
Right.
Very rarely are you going to find offensive line guys who have that athleticism that you might have to actually slim down a little bit. I think the last staff recruited a lot of, we call them build-a tackles, right? Last staff recruited a decent amount of them. One thing I got to think is that I'm assuming you have to approach each cycle as if you have to look at what you already have, right?
Right.
So I think they're in a position where, taking 5, I don't necessarily think it means that offensive line's that they're in dire straits there at all. Well, I mean, dude, Marky Walbridge has already gotten buzz as a guy who might actually play this year, right? I mean, he had a great spring. He won't start, but they talked about using him in like maybe their 6 offensive lineman package. Then you bring in Malachi, who I believe if he had enrolled early, I think he'd have been a factor in some capacity this year as well. So it's not like they're like desperate, but, and we talked about this at a few different positions, it's like this is still a new staff who wants to build their own identity, right? And I think obviously they know the importance of winning up front. I mean, every program does, but Utah has won up front. They've always had good offensive lines under Jim Harding. So, I think it's fine. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. And these guys that they're recruiting, it's not as if that they're taking flyers on these guys. I mean, these kids all have
they're high caliber guys.
Right. Campus has Auburn, Tennessee, Vandy after him. Kennedy's got Washington. Rouleau, I believe, had Penn State, and some others. I don't have his offer sheet in front of me. We've seen.
I mean, who I'm not saying this is more on. He's on the roster now, but like a guy I think he would have loved Jim Harding, and he is going to love is Tommy Froman.
Yep.
A guy fits them more perfectly.
He had the extremely late rankings bump that usually predicts future success, right? And Tommy Carr had the same thing, right? Remember, I mean, Tommy Carr was a 3-star, and then very last eval, he got bumped up to a 4-star. Frauman moved from a 86, I think, to an 88, and then to a 90 in the last rank. So yeah, you're right. I mean, and that's the other thing is like it really liked Michigan's offensive line class last cycle. Like I thought it was one of the best in the country, right? Marky Walbridge was one of the most understated, elite offensive line additions in the class. I mean, he was a quiet kid. Michigan, he had Bama, he had Penn State, he had all kinds of schools after him. And I think he's another one of those guys that didn't report other offers after he got them, right? So, that's always like kids like that. I always think that's kind of cool. It's like, what difference does it make? I'm already committed here. I'm going here. I don't need to, report these other offers. But yeah, so I think your first full cycle as a staff, I think building up front on the offensive line is very important. And well, again, even going back to like Lewis, I mean, he's got what now? Notre Dame, USC, I mean, Penn State, like he's added some big time offers since he, I mean, it's definitely been since he committed, but even since the new staff came in, right? Like in the winter eval, he picked up some major offers. So it's like, I think there's not a year one guy in this group, I don't think, but it's okay. One, and two, these are players that some of the top schools in the country were after, right? Like Lipsy had LSU make a late run. And like I said, all these other, was it Notre Dame? And I think Esposito visited USC, didn't he, at one point?
No, he was gone up.
He was going to. Yeah, I know he had one scheduled, but yeah. So it's like, that's where it's fine. Like it's let these guys. We always say let them marinate a little bit and go from there with it. So yeah. So Ty Kennedy, like I said, probably a guy we probably should have talked a little bit more about leading into the visit, but a guy that obviously, right? I mean, he's kind of been.
I'll say this too. I think give credit to the guy, but Grant Newsome did a really good job stacking this offense line room. It's not like Jim Harding's walking into like an empty cupboard. Like you're gonna have guys, Andrew Babaloa, he's coming back, Evan Link, he's coming back, younger guys that have kind of emerged a little bit. Avery Gash, like they have a lot of talent in that room. And I think that also gives you the luxury, is what you're saying, and what you kind of mentioned of you don't need to shoot for the stars for guys that are maybe the 5 stars you're going to have to spend a crap load for, right? You can hit on those guys that you really evaluate that I think are going to outperform their rankings, which, shocker, Utah has done with prospects their entire history of finding guys that are going to outperform their rankings. And if you look at their class right now, what Michigan has in the fold, those 3 offensive linemen, I think it's a safe assumption that all 3 of them could outperform their rankings. Maybe not Lipsy, because he is pretty high to begin with, but like Esposito and Rouleau, I think it's safe to say they could outperform their rankings. So Yeah, I think you have that luxury too, and it's just this staff has done a really good job with not only locking guys in, but finding the right guys, right? I think that's the other thing you're really noticing. They're finding guys that fit what they're looking for, the mold they're looking for, and culture guys that fit what Kyle Whittingham is trying to establish in Ann Arbor. And I'm not saying Sharon did a bad job of recruiting, but I think sometimes it felt like we're recruiting just for the top talent. And it was like you almost kind of wish for more like the Dusty May of like roster, roster, construction of like, okay, how is all this going to come together? Right? How is all this going to fit perfectly? And it seems like this staff right now has a clear vision and plan on how they want to attack moving forward. And you're seeing that with not only the staff, but from the GM to Dave Ploquin to the recruiting staff to the front office, everyone is on the same page and everyone's moving in unison. It's been really refreshing to see, I would say. And I think that's the other key thing to take away from these official visits is how smooth they've been running, but also the pitch has been very solid and also the relationships that they are establishing on these trips are a big key as well. So great job. But yeah, the real test is going to be this weekend and then for sure Victor's weekend.
Yep, totally agree. Yeah, I mean, on the recruiting side of things, like the department, I mean, it's pretty much been a complete overhaul.
Right.
Like logistically, not personal. I mean, they kept a decent amount of guys. There was some, there was some turnover. There's obviously been a lot of new names, but they kept, some guys. Some of the I think they kept the right guys on from the last staff. But I mean, it was as far as like the logistics and the organizational aspect of that department, it's pretty much had to be a complete overhaul. And I think so far, I think we're seeing the positives. They're reaping the benefits already. There really hasn't been one guy committed in the class yet who I don't think we didn't already have listed as a top target and wasn't listed for a while, right? I mean, normally it's like, that's not usually the case. What's clear is that they've pinpointed who they want. They're making their run at them, and so far they've hit on more than they've missed. I mean, they're not batting 1,000. Nobody's going to bat 1,000, but they've done really well in that aspect so far. So remains to be seen how they finish. Obviously, there's an eternity until signing day. You got the whole season to go. You got to see how the team is on the field. That's always going to matter. You're trying to hold a class together. I mean, right? I mean, that matters. I still think that's the most important thing. Like you can't go 8-4 or 7-5 this year and expect to hold on to your top, like some of your top committees. You're going to hold on to guys, but it's not going to be easy, and you're probably going to lose some guys, right? So, and if you go 11-1, you might flip a couple big names, that are committed elsewhere, or maybe get back in on a big name who's uncommitted. So, I still obviously what happens on the field is I still think is the most important thing at the end of the day. Kids want to commit to a school that's going to win. So I think that'd do it for us. There were some questions on the board. I mean,
one was like tight end recruiting. I would say Anthony Cartwright seems to be the other main option. They would love to pair of Cole Lumbris. Christian Henshaw, you mentioned, I think is coming later on. I don't know if it's this weekend or next for Victor's, but he's going to be LDS. He's going to be taking a mission, so that technically is more of a 2029 recruitment, if you want to look at it that way. So I think when it comes to tight end, it's a very condensed board. But Steve, you posted on the board your Colt Lumpris thoughts on his.
I just thought I mean that topic last week. I thought, like I said,
yeah,
got on that topic. Good. It's like he's just a different.
He's a unicorn. I call him a unicorn. Yeah. And for me, this is, and I might be in the, my own camp here, but I think he's one of Michigan's top 3 commitments in this class. I
think he could. I think at the end of the day, he could end up being a couple people like we had the topic. It turned out we some good discussion. He's the biggest tight end that Michigan will take since Zach Gentry.
Oh wow!
But he's also if he's really is 249 because someone else posted he doesn't look 249. I said that before we recorded. I said if he's 249, he carries it really well. But he's in general is about the same size as Zach Gentry was, but he looks. I mean, remember Zach Gentry was a quarterback by trade,
Right.
so Lumper's clearly a more polished player than Gentry was at this point when he was in high school. But the other big tight ends they took in the past were guys like AJ Williams and Wheatley Jr., who should have been offensive linemen from the get-go. Like those guys, they essentially were extra offensive. Like AJ Williams, I remember basically was like an extra offensive lineman when he did play. And Wheatley got into the NFL as an offensive tackle. So, so point being, Lumpers is one of the biggest tight ends Michigan's ever recruited, if not the biggest. So I just, you can talk receiver. I know they mentioned the JJ Buchanan stuff. He's already so much bigger than Buchanan is. I just don't see a world where that's his full-time situation. So that was kind of the point, the reason I wanted to bring it up, because I wondered how people thought there. And, I just think he has All-American potential if he can put his hand down, learn how to block. Doesn't mean you can't use him early as he's learning to block. Doesn't mean you can't use him in passing sets, stuff like that. But I think the kid's got All-American potential at tight end. So
yeah, we got another question that I'll just kind of maybe rapid fire a few of these. It's been rumored that over the years, Michigan hasn't had the strongest relationship with in-state high school coaches. What is the new staff's approach to those relationships? Simple. Be present, be consistent, go out as much as possible, right? I think you've seen Michigan make a force on making in-state recruiting a presence. I mean, the most commitments they have in this cycle is in-state. They have 4 guys from the state of Michigan committed, and they're hoping to obviously get more. And that doesn't seem to be changing, right? I think those relationships start with just showing face, just showing consistency, and just showing time and effort. And that's really what it comes down to, I mean, a great example for me is, and Steve, you can talk about this quite a bit, is Chris Partridge. Like when they sent him down to Mississippi, he's from New Jersey. Like the guy doesn't, you know what I mean? He doesn't know what Mississippi entails and who to talk to and who not to talk to and what are the hot schools and, but he figured out a way, and guess what? Michigan became a factor for many guys in Mississippi, Georgia, and you saw all that stem from him just showing effort and time and really forming real, genuine relationships. And I think that's what it comes down to with the staff and in-state recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Partridge, Jay Harbaugh, Jerry Montgomery, Sharon, if we're being honest, as a recruiter, I mean, those were guys that you could put anywhere. I mean, I remember when Sharon I know he didn't turn out, but Darian Green Warren out of Mater Dei, and he was the primary for Daxton Hill.
I was going to say Hill.
Daxton Hill, right? But Chris Partridge might be the best as far as like in covering Michigan, might be the best just pure recruiter that I ever covered. My thing on in-state stuff is like it's kind of twofold. So one, of course, they're paying more attention to it because this class and the next class are loaded in the relative sense. I mean, it does make a little bit of a difference when there are probably in 2028, there's probably 7, 8, 9 guys that Michigan will probably like legitimately like target, will probably be top target type kids, right? So that matters. And then I've always kind of felt like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like this has been the thing since like I even started doing this, was that Michigan, there's always criticism that Michigan's not doing enough at whether it's certain schools or whatever. And it's like, I just feel like Michigan gets held to it. And I think in some respects it's fair think they get held to like a little bit of a different standard than pretty much any other program within the state. Now they are the premier in-state program, so I get it. But I've always felt like they've made in-state stuff a priority. I mean, you think like it was like 2017 when it was like Jeraymond Hall, Deron Irving Bay,
They're throwing it back.
Corey Malone. Well, I think in Donovan and Ambry Thomas, it was like they took like 12 kids in-state that cycle, and you'd still hear people saying that Jim wasn't making Michigan enough of a So it's like I don't know. I mean, and that being said, I mean the new staff's done a great job building that, building that bridge. Because that's different for these guys because the vast majority of them have little to no experience recruiting the Midwest, right? So
I think that's a legit fear. I think
yes.
families are hoping, no offense, they don't want a Jonathan Smith, a guy from the West Coast that has no connection out here, and he's just getting guys from the West Coast and hoping and praying he can still have some sort of relationship with the coaches around here. That's not going to happen, So
no, that's to your original point. That's where I think it makes the presence and the constant presence. I think that's where it makes total sense. That's where I totally in agreement there. And I think, like I said, the biggest thing for me is that these next two classes are very strong. I mean, there's even some guys in 20. They've already put out a handful of offers in 29 too, but that 2028 class in state is loaded. I mean, DJ Bidden's ranked higher than Gorant was. You got Jaden Bell at Brother Rice. You got Trussell at Brother Rice. You got AJ Henley, Jaden Evans, LaMarcus Army. Cass Tech's got 3 guys that are top targets right now, and I think they have a couple other kids in 28 that are pretty solid too.
Yeah,
so there's dudes. Camden No in Portage. It's like it's just a very strong in-state class, so it makes sense that it'd be blasphemy if Michigan wasn't trying to make in-state a priority. So
jeez,
look at you, question.
Steve Smith.
Yeah, right. Oh, geez, dude. Yeah. No, please no. Other thing, I did see a question it was kind of a question in the chat, but O-Dog says he thinks linebacker is a bigger need than corner this cycle. The only reason I disagree is because Michigan may have the same starters at linebacker next year that they do this year. I think that a lot of that question also will depend on what did they really get with the kids that they got in this last cycle, right? Because none of them were super highly regarded. I think there's talent there. I'm not saying that. I mean, for all I know, all of those kids could pan out with Catchings, Dabney, Reeder, and then am I missing? I feel like I'm missing one.
They got a couple guys from the portal, they
did. They took
and Stalling. He won't be around. I think he's just like a 5th-year guy. But I mean, for me personally, thinking about it, Reeder's a guy they should have took way earlier. I mean, they're lucky they were able to get him from Wisconsin as late as they did.
Yep.
Dabney
I agree.
Looks like a Mack truck. You saw the hit he had in the spring game. He's going to be very good. Catchings
played a lot in the spring game too.
Yeah. I think there's a possibility all 3 of those guys can make an impact, but people want, that Jake Ryan, that big impact guy, right? And I think you could see that with, you said Chase Taylor, I think, is going to have a big jump this year. Nadewusu Boateng, I think Michigan kind of needs him to have a really good year.
Yep.
And then Troy Bowles, I want to say he's got a couple years left too.
Yep.
So
it is a need. It is a need, though. I mean, we're not.
100% a need.
It's absolutely a need, and I also agree with the idea that. Now, Owasu Boateng was ranked pretty well, but even he was a kid who was ranked really high and then kind of slid. I think that slide probably was not warranted at this point because it looks like he's going to end up being a guy. But it's been a while since Michigan picked up a top 100. Yeah. Was it Junior Colson? Like even Jimmy Rolder was like at the back end of the top 247.
He was a late riser, Jimmy
Right.
Rolder.
He did what he did. He was a 4-star, but like when you're talking like a top 100, top 50 type guy, it's been a while. Now
I think,
linebacker, yeah, go ahead. So
well, I was gonna
sorry.
say, I think the fans at this point are looking for that Dakota Garant level of
At
linebacker.
linebacker, yeah.
I think that's where the cries for like, where's this guy? Where's this guy? And Nelson committed to Texas Tech, I think is a premier athlete. And I think he would be a great pickup. But again, you're dealing with Texas Tech from a kid from Texas. Like that's a tough pull to begin with. I think a miss for them, and they would even say the same was uh, Ethan Hauser, from Buford. As much as it was nice to get his teammate and Braden Watson.
Tank Watson, yeah.
I just Hauser, and that again, he's committed to Vanderbilt, so that speaks volumes of what he thinks about academics. But that's a kid I could see them circle back around because he's very much better than what his ranking shows. I mean, he was the guy that we've talked about on this podcast several times, and I think he could be easily a top 247 prospect. So, but when it comes to that 5-star, that headliner, I don't know again if I hate to say it like this, but like what the market value of those guys are, and how does Michigan really look at that? And that's more of a Dave Ploquin question, right?
Right.
But I just Michigan staff last year didn't really look at it, and I don't get the vibe they're doing the same.
I was just gonna say that I kind of feel like it's a similar approach here, which makes me wonder, because I was actually just scrolling down the linebacker offers for Michigan in 27, and I mean they've kind of made a run at Brayton Feister. I don't think nothing's going to happen there. Noah Glover committed to Miami. But they didn't even make the top whatever for Igwebuike out of Mount Carmel. Sean Fox, they were never a factor for. Brandon Lockley, Oregon obviously probably made a good offer there. It's like a lot of those top guys that they made their first rounds with, not only did they not get any of them, but they never really, they were out of those races a while ago, right? I mean, the first few guys, Blake Betton, who's not even a 4-star, but I think we agree is a 4-star level player. He was one of the first, like we did a thing on him, committed to Penn State now. But not only did Michigan not land any of those guys, but like I said, they were out of those for a while. I mean, the first few guys that Alex Whittingham went to see, I believe, were Betton, Brandon Lockley, Noah Glover, probably one of the other guys I mentioned in there. I'm trying to think of who else might have been in that group. Probably Igwebuike, I'm assuming. I mean, he goes to Mount Carmel, so he probably got to stop too. But, kind of wonder what the resource devotion at linebacker is right now, right? So, but
do you go through the portal, right?
Right, and that's and Michigan historically has had a lot of luck with 3-star. Well, you could shout out Clint Brewster with the Devin Bush Jr. from way back in the day when he was ranked as a 3-star prospect.
Michael Barrett
screaming for a 4-star ranking for him and never got. Yeah, Michael Barrett too. Like, so it linebacker has perpetually become the most interesting position for me recruiting wise because you have certain schools. Feels like Texas gets a 5-star like every single cycle. Oklahoma, Bama usually gets a guy. It's like certain schools seem to want to devote more to linebacker than Michigan historically has, right? So, yeah, we'll see. The other name to watch there, Frederick Ford, too, right? The recent offer out of Michigan building something in Mississippi. Be interested to see if they get him on camp. I wouldn't have. And it kind of pisses me off because I can't use the Jeremy LeSueur factoid anymore. I mean, I can, but it doesn't really hit as hard. But Frederick Ford, 4-star out of Mississippi, will be another name to watch at linebackers. So yeah, it's a big need. I think corner's a much bigger need at this point. But either way, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week at some point, I assume, probably like Wednesday or Thursday. We'll have to check the schedules and everything. But otherwise, for Bryce Marich and myself, Steve Lorenz, this is the Michigan Insider Recruiting Podcast. Thanks for listening.